Good morning, evening, afternoon, night, whatever time of the day it is for you. There was something that, okay, I was reading another manga. It's called Angelic Lady, mainly about going back in time, as per usual, reincarnations and stuff like that. I really love these stories. This one, on the other hand, has really ticked me off, just from the description alone, because I realized something that even if a human being were to go back in time and relive the life they had, it would be different no matter what. Um, it is it is physically and mentally impossible to reenact the way you acted during that first time. It is impossible to go back in time and act the exact same way that you did before. Um, the way you carry yourself, the way you talk to people, the way you act around certain people, the choices you made. Just the simple act of walking around after going back in time is completely different from how it was before. So, although the people around you are the same, you're different no matter what. Um, from the description of this story, let me see if I can find it. Okay, here we go. The description of this story is um, Angelica was my friend. I wanted to give her anything and everything, uh, who I thought more precious than my own family. And I eventually turned Angela, a lowly aristocrat from a lowly aristocrat from a countryside girl, into the flower of capital society. But it was betrayal that came back to me. She sold me and my family and became the imperial princess. Did you have to go this far? Because I wanted you to be unhappy. I wanted to take your whole life away. But when I thought I had died under the guillotine, I was surprisingly back in time. Oh, hello, my name is Angela Vito. You're Angela? Nice to meet you. Everyone is waiting for you. With a bright smile, I held her hands together again. Now, I know from the description that it's not going to go exactly as Angela wanted, but there was one story that I read that goes back in time that does that. I believe she said it was her third life. Um, the first time she dies respectfully, after torturing the main character, because she thinks that it'll help her go back to her world. Well, she wakes up and is still in the same body and realizes that that is her life. So, so anyway, she relives the way she did in the book. And the first thought that came to my mind when I read that was, that's impossible. Um, unless you have lived that first life over and over and over, acting the exact same way that you did, just being who you are, and then realizing that just the simple thought of a human being realizing that what they've been through, they've gone through before. So let's say you have a person who lived their entire life. I guess the best way to put it is a good two shoes. Um, has never been in trouble, got straight A's in school and stuff like that. And then that person is reborn. Now, at first they don't realize it. But one accident happens in their life where they're injured. Um, and it happened in the last life too. The simple act of like getting in the head, getting hit in the head, or falling down or something. And it brings back those memories. Now, when you get up and realize after healing up and everything, and you realize that you've lived this life before, your entire demeanor changes, no matter how conscious you are of yourself. Um, no matter how in tune you are to the way you acted and to the people around you, none of that matters. The second you realize that you have lived the life that you've lived before, your demeanor changes. The way you carry yourself changes. The way you present yourself to people changes. The way you look at people changes. Even for someone with a photographic memory, it is psychologically impossible to reenact the way you did before. Even with actors on a stage or behind a camera or anything of the sort, if they went back to replay the old movies that they've played in before, it would be completely different. Because not only does that person know how to how to act, but they know what's going to happen. It's no longer a surprise anymore. It's They would carry themselves a tad bit different. So the movie would turn out different. Um, Even if you tried doing everything the exact same, it would still be different. It is impossible for human beings to go back and make the same mistakes, the same choices, the have the same decisions, or to treat people the exact same way. It is impossible. Now, the only reason I say this is because even when I go back and I think of when I was a child, I can't remember how many times I went to the bathroom. I can't remember what time it was when I went to the bathroom. I can't remember what was on TV. I can't remember what we had for dinner. And more than half the time, I could barely remember the conversations. So the details in day to day life would be completely different if I went back and had to do it again. Even if I remembered everything, it would still be different because I remembered everything. I would be like, well, I've lived through this before, so it's not going to affect me as much. So, of course, if you get bullied again or you have a heartbreak of from the same person again, even though you've done everything the exact same and everything, it's not going to affect you the way it did the first time. Um, it's it's completely different from the previous life. So if you go back in time and you relive that exact life, things would be completely different. So the way I acted around all three of my boyfriends would be completely different. The decisions I made while I was with the jerks would be completely different. The way I dealt with the mistakes that I've made would be completely different. First of all, chances are I would have never left Florida in the first place when I was 16. Just wouldn't have happened. 17, 16 or 17. I wouldn't have left in the first place. because I knew where it would lead. But at the same time, it was one of the only mistakes that I made that I got something good out of. So if I had to go back in time and redo everything that I did before, it would be impossible. Um, One, I would be far more confident when walking through middle school or high school or anything of the sort. I would have been far more confident than I was the first time around. Why? Because I know I wasn't going to die. I would have been like, I don't die yet. I would be perfectly fine. And of course, because of that thinking that is in human nature, knowing when you're going to die changes how you act, no matter the consequences or anything of the sort. So, just based on how confident I was, I would have never dated any of them. Uh, Actually, I probably still would have dated the first boyfriend. Uh, yeah, but I'm pretty sure that because of how confident I am, I would end up leaving him again anyway, which is heartbreaking because he was one of my favorite boyfriends as the only one to actually care for my well being. But he has a better life now that I'm not in it. So I would give him that opportunity to have that chance again. I wouldn't want to keep that from him. So it would be like a year and a half after we started our relationship that I would have to break up with him. There are definitely a lot of things, like a shitload of things that I would change if I went back in time. Um, one of the main ones being not getting with my second boyfriend. Still flirt with him. He was freaking cute. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't date him again just because I know how big of a jackass he is. Uh, Third boyfriend, definitely wouldn't date again. The only thing I would regret about the second one is that I wouldn't have had my little girl if I never dated him. But at the same time, it would have been better for the both of us. I'm pretty sure life would have figured out a way for me to have her again, for her to exist again, just because of grand design and all that. Um, Whew, that would have been terrible. Um, Third boyfriend, the only thing I would have regretted about that was that I would never get to meet my dog. And because I never and because I never dated him, I wouldn't have had a need to escape. Uh, a way to run to Washington to protect myself. And I wouldn't have had to go through the hell that I went through there. Um, so, yeah, everything would have been entirely different. Chances are I would have died pretty early, um, considering all of that. Yeah. pretty early. Uh, yeah. Anyway, she's from what I've read as the description is she's going to try and act the exact same way that she did the first time. The only difference is she's not going to make Angela the flower of social society. And the first thing that came to my mind was regardless of how you treat her, the fact that you know that she's a bad person, you won't treat her the exact same. You won't give her the exact same opportunities. Mainly because you know how she's going to use them, how she's going to abuse it. Now, granted, Angela was very smart about how she did this because not only did she keep playing the perfect girl throughout her entire time, she waited until she got everyone on her side to show her true colors, which I gotta say is nearly impossible even for humans to do. Because after 3 to 5 years of a human being acting the exact same way for a long period of time, they're eventually going to break at some point. At some point, they're going to show their true colors or have a conversation that reveals their true character. It is impossible to keep up the act the entire time. So things like stories that go back in time and have the character act the exact same way is bull because it's impossible. How many times you went to the bathroom, how many times you kissed a boyfriend, or how many times you told them that you loved them, or how many times you ate, what you ate. Um, just simple everyday things that you hardly think about would be impossible to reenact because you don't know the specific times and how how you carried yourself to the bathroom or the way you opened the door. Small things like that could change everything around you. Even if you could remember simple details like that, the fact that you know how you acted would change the way you carry yourself, your demeanor. So impossible. It is one of the things that kept getting to me every time I read these back in time stories instead of the isekais or the reincarnations. It was the time travel ones that got to me the most. Now, one of them, what was the name of it? Mm, I believe it's called The Villainess Goes Back in Time. Let me see. I know I have it somewhere. The problem is remembering the frickin' name of these things. No, it's not that. As a fortune love, law, as maintaining contract, women's demands. Mm, I can't remember the name of it. It's driving me crazy. I know it has time in it, in the title. Villainous goes back in time or something along those lines. But anyway, there are consequences for her going back in time. Uh, Anytime that she uses the little time clock that she had gotten to go back, I believe she said it was 5 minutes, her body ages rapidly. Um, so at a certain point, she looks like a full grown adult. And the story is still continuing. Now, she's not doing everything the exact way she did before, obviously, um, which is why she's using the clock in the first place. But she decides to limit her use of the clock to only deal with her sister by marriage only. Um, so just the way she carried herself and everything like that, even some things that she tried to do the exact same turned out a different result because of her. Even if she remembered everything she did before, the exact way she flipped a paper or got injured or grabbed a pen or talked to someone or grabbed someone, one thing, all it takes is just one thing to change everything around you. Um, so her going back and doing something the exact same way that she did in the last life because it turned out well would not turn out the same as it did the first time. Because not only does she know how it's going to turn out, but because she's so confident in how it's going to turn out, it won't turn out that way because people around her would take notice of how confident and authoritative she is when it comes to that decision. Uh, Human beings are very intuitive when they see someone carrying their selves confidently. You see a confident person walking down the street, and the first thought that comes to your mind is, "I wish I could carry myself that way." Well, that's always the first thing that comes to my mind. Uh, is I wish I could be like that. But the problem is that when you are like that, it's different. Sometimes you wish that you would never wish that in the first place because sometimes your wishes can be mistakes. Anyway, that was all I wanted to talk about today. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I hope you guys have a beautiful morning, evening, afternoon, night, whatever time of the day it is for you. And I will see you shortly. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after.